I am Sal Mercogliano, Associate Professor of History at Campbell University, a former merchant mariner and an instructor in maritime history, maritime policy, and maritime security. And on this episode of What's Going On Shipping, we may have a blockage that's worse than the Suez, but it's not in the Suez. It's in the city of Yantian. So, one of the reasons I put this video series together and doing these videos for you all is because I take a look at a lot of shipping news sources. Now, I'm not in the shipping industry. I'm not in a company or corporation or shipping line or anything like that. Instead, what I like to do is take a look at the news, kind of put it together. Historians love to get pieces of evidence together, put it together, and come up with a solution to a thesis that they put out there. So, kind of a CSI of maritime news. And so one of the things I like to do is take a look at all these news sources and put together and see trends that are emerging. And the big one that's coming in right now is out of the city of Yantian. And that's going to be dealing with a potential blockage that, according to some maritime reporters, will be worse than Suez. So let's take a minute and kind of recap. Earlier videos, I talk about this, but I really like to talk about this a little more because it talks about how important our maritime trade is and how consolidated it is. This is a story from American Shipper Freightwaves that talks about the fact that the top 10 container liners are controlling 85% of the market, and they're not done yet. That's an amazing statistic, and it's growing. It keeps growing. We're seeing consolidation in the terms of this. This chart right here shows you the top 10 carrier groups out there. Number one right now is Maersk, but they're being nipped at the heels by MSC. MSC, Mediterranean Shipping Company, is going to pass them. Maersk is Danish. MSC is Swiss. CMA, CGM, that's French. COSCO is the Chinese People's Republic of China's main shipping line. Hapag-Lloyd, again, is out of Germany. ONE is a consolidation of Japanese lines. Evergreen is most famous for Ever Given, obviously, but Taiwanese. HMM, which used to be the old Hyundai Merchant Marine, is Korean. Yang Ming, that's also a Taiwanese line. And then the newest, number 10 out there, is Zim. Zim is an Israeli line. The top 9 of these are all in alliances. You'll see here the creation of these maritime alliances. These are groupings, and what these companies tend to do is group themselves together into these alliances, and they share routes, they share trade. And as you'll see here, 9 of those 10 companies are in 3 alliances, and this shows you the evolution of those alliances over time. Big change came in 2015 with the ultra large container ships. And now you see right now companies are in one of 3 major alliances. There's the 2M Alliance for MSC and Maersk lines. There's the Ocean Alliance, which is CMA, Costco slash UCL, OOCL is now part of them, and Evergreen. I always find that one of the most interesting because here you have Costco, the Chinese mainland shipping line, and Evergreen, which is Taiwanese, and then the alliances, everybody else, ONE, Yangmin, HMM, and Hapag-Lloyd. So right now we're seeing this massive consolidation in the container industry. Over 85% of control by these 10 firms, growing in scale. And right now we're hearing problems on the horizon. And this is the story I wanted to talk to you about today. Congestion at South China ports worsens on anti-COVID-19 measures. This is the story out of G Captain right here. This is a Reuters story that came out, and they're talking about congestion in the port of Yantian down in the Guangdong province. So one of the issues we're seeing here is the outbreak of coronaviruses. China was able to suppress the coronavirus for a long time. They very quickly kind of shut everything down. And remember back to 2020. And now all of a sudden they're having issues here with these outbreaks. And these outbreaks are causing delays. Right down here, ONE sent a notice on Wednesday that Yantian, I gotta say it right, International Container Terminal continues to operate below capacity because of COVID-related work restrictions. Right here, the world's leading container liner, Maersk, on Thursday increased the duration of expected delays at Yantian to 16 days from 14 days previously. More than 50 container vessels are waiting on the dock in the outer Pearl River Delta. This story is not alone. This is the story that came out here by Lorianne LaRocco. Lorianne LaRocco, if you don't know, is a trade and economic reporter for CNBC. She's written some great books on the trade. Absolutely a must follow. If you follow somebody on Twitter, besides me, at Mercogliano S, be sure to follow Lorianne. She is fantastic. And one of the things she puts in here, and I like the way she puts it here in the very beginning of the story, the armchair quarterbacking on Yantian continues, and while the commentary is interesting, the only hard fact in this hot mess is drayage, the number of containers stacked up in the ports and the processing times at ports. Trade movement is basic common sense. You need people. If there are stringent quarantine measures and few people working, then trade will move at a snail's pace. This is supported by the latest data sheet pulled from marine traffic. And what she goes in here is an analysis about this, and she uses information from FreightWaves sonar, which basically tracks exports out of the port and seeing them. You see a big spike here coming in the end of May into June, and now it starts to drop off here. So she's using all the information she has access to for that. There was an earlier story the previous week where they show the last 10 weeks at the port. And one of the things you see here is the medium time at anchorage and the medium time in port. And both of those are increasing. We see both of those increasing. So we know that there is a delay going on. And then, of course, one of the best ways to see this is to go right to marine traffic and take a look. This is the port of Yantian right here, and I had a better view of it here. I kind of cleaned up. These are all cargo ships, the green cargo ships. You'll see vessels here at anchor off the port right here. So these are some of the smaller vessels. These are not the big ones right here. But if you zoom out here, and I will zoom out for you here, right there. Go out here, off in the anchorage here. Off here is where you see the anchorage right here. And all these ships are waiting to get into Yantian. Add to it, Hong Kong has this. I mean, this the amount of vessels sitting here is quite impressive. And you see these vessels at anchor here. Here's the OOCL Asia, for example, at the Hong Kong anchorage, waiting to head in. Again, these are not all container ships. These are all cargo vessels right here. But it starts giving you the impression of how much this cargo is going to, how quick it can start backloading very quickly and backlogging, excuse me, real quickly. Add to this is a Bloomberg story that just came out. China buying so much corn, its ports are clogging. There's a lot of clogging going on here. This sounds like a digestive tract story, but it has to do with blockages and clogging. You got to remember, China, which is the size of the United States, only has 8% arable land. Not a lot of space to grow things on. And so China is extremely dependent on food imports. And one of them is corn. And if you go in the story with Bloomberg right here, at least 2 ships laden with U.S. corn have been waiting for weeks before eventually moving to berth on Thursday, according to Bloomberg. The Priscilla, carrying 71,400 tons, anchored off the port of Zhangjiang, a port in Guangdong province, since May 11th, and the Creamy with 75,000 tons. China's grain purchases have surged this year as hog herds recover from a devastating outbreak of African swine fever. There's also been an issue with flooding from the Three Gorges Dam. There was a story that I wanted to do when I was away, and I may come back and do it, about illegal fishing off the coast of Argentina by Chinese vessels. But right now, one of the things you're seeing is China purchasing huge amounts. A Chinese purchaser said his cargo of U.S. corn arrived in February, but had to wait a month before unloading it. Feed mills are not the only buyers. The government's been shipping in corn from Ukraine and the U.S. to replenish state reserves. China is set to import a record 26 million tons of corn this marketing year. So, I mean, it's a massive amount of food that's being shipped into it. Again, you've got to keep this population fed. You got to keep this economy fed. And that's one of the reasons why I am not a firm believer that China wants a global conflict. They're not out there to get into a shooting war with the United States, but what they are deathly afraid of is having their trade impacted. And that, cutting off China's trade, their imports, their exports, is a death knell to them. They saw what happened to Japan during World War II. They know what happened to them when the Japanese did this to them in the 1930s. And they saw how the Europeans were able to control China through the grabbing of their ports during the period of imperialism in the late 19th century. This goes on here. Ships skip Singapore as China's congestion snarls supply chains. Ships are going to try to streamline it. They're going to miss some port calls. And we see that right there with Shanghai. This is a Bloomberg report coming out. And then this story right here, container shortages worsen as ships avoid Chinese port that need empties. On top of everything, we've got COVID outbreak in Yantian, which is slowing things up. We've got backlog of bulk cargo that needs to come off in grain, but then we have shortages of containers. And this is another story. Again, this comes out of Lodestar. The availability of containers at Southern Chinese port continues to degenerate as carriers emit calls due to a wave of COVID outbreaks. They don't want the boxes locked into the port and not able to get out. So now they're avoiding going in there. And again, this is what I'm talking about these myriad of stories that you need to kind of look at. You look at any one of these stories and it doesn't seem that distressing. But when you start putting them all together, you start realizing there's more to this going on here. Add to this again, how 3 Chinese companies have cornered the global container production. So China is building boxes. They are the one place where you see the building of boxes. You would think that any country in the world could build, basically a box. It's not exactly brain surgery, 6 sides, not that hard, but 96% of the world's dry cargo containers and 100% of the reefer containers are being built in Chinese factories right now. And so 3 companies have basically cornered that market. And you see it right here. You see it kind of coming in here where you see that China International Marine Containers are producing a 42% share. Fang International Containers, 26%, CXIC, 14%. So they're making 82% of the containers there. And obviously that creates a problem when you can't move things in and out of China. This gets very eerily similar to what we saw in the spring of 2020, repeating itself today in the summer of 2021. On top of that, on the receiving end, Port of Los Angeles just announced a record. They were able to process 10 million TEUs. That is a new record over a 12-month period. This is puts Los Angeles at a level that hasn't been seen before. But understand, Los Angeles is still backlogged. It's still backlogged. They're not working 24/7 shifts there. They have got containers stacked up on the terminal. They've got issues with drivers, with chassis, with railways. You have Union Pacific just announcing delays in shipping boxes by rail. And this all plays into that larger infrastructure picture. So that when we come back here and see a story that talks about, hey, there's maybe an outbreak of COVID in one of these ports. And again, remember, it's anti-COVID measures they're taking. So that's impacting the workforce right there. It's impacting this port, and this impact of this port then resonates to other ports in the area. We're seeing it in Hong Kong. Other ports around here are beginning to be impacted by this. And again, once these container companies, and again, we're down to just 10 large ones out there, when they can't move goods as seamlessly and efficiently as they do in the past, that creates shortages, rates increase, which makes it more expensive to ship goods, which means it makes it more expensive for you, the consumer, to buy them. And that is why we can expect and why we see Lorianne LaRocco write this as her basically tagline for a story. Yantian may be worse than the Suez blockage. So that's your cheery piece of news as we head into the weekend. I hope you enjoyed this video and this information. If you do, please subscribe and like. Always happy to get new subscribers and to get those thumbs up, which will allow these videos to be shared on YouTube. Be sure to hit the bell so you'll be alerted about new videos as they go out, and share this via social media. Let other people know about this. A little encapsulated, try to keep these things 10, 15 minutes, news bites for you, and look at a piece of the news out there that I think is important. There's a lot going on out there. I will get back to some stories I know that everybody wants some follow-up on as more information comes out. And I'll also be sure that before I go off on trips from now on, record an episode or two so that they drop while I'm gone. So this is Sal signing off. Everybody have a great weekend.